Okay, hi booktube, Aaron here, and welcome to the second part of Proust vlog. So I've been making my way through Remembrance of Things Past by Marcel Proust, and after every volume I've just been sharing my thoughts, going through the things that have been rattling around in my head, and I suppose going through the way that the book's been affecting me, I suppose. And I'm 2 volumes in, so I've finished Within a Budding Grove, which is, yeah, I suppose it is a volume about kind of coming of age and, you know, being in your, I suppose, sort of early teens and stuff, and puberty and all of those kind of changes he's kind of dealing with in this volume. And it really carries on from where the first volume left off, but I don't really want to get too wrapped up into synopsis, and really as I look at it, not really that much happens, which is okay because there's lots of really great stuff in here. But to really sum it up, what I felt like what's going on in the second volume is it's a long series of impressions, of kind of constructing impressions and sort of imagining these idealized versions of people or places, and then seeing the reality, and then they're suddenly deconstructed and it's kind of destroyed. In the first volume there's a bit where the narrator's thinking a bit about ruins, and you know how they were once, you know, probably very lovely, stately buildings, and now there's not much left of them. And at around the same point he's thinking about the places that he's remembering, and the people that he's talking about, and how many of these people are now dead or have changed so much. Whole wings of this house that he used to live in have been demolished, and there's something else built there now. And you know, the way that memory is a way of rebuilding things that are lost, and in a way imagination is similar to that, but it's kind of the other way around, but it's kind of similar. You're building something up that was kind of never there, and then this thing that you've built up is then demolished when you see the reality of it. It's kind of complicated further. I hope this is making some kind of sense. It seems to be complicated further by the fact that when these imaginations and these images are built up, they seem to be idealized versions of the past. So one example I could give is this town called Baalbek, and I think since the first volume and through the first half of the second volume, the narrator's really enraptured with this place. He's read these history books and these old kind of travel guides and things, and it's by the sea. There are these really impressive cliffs, and there's an old cathedral there, and he's imagining this old Breton style cathedral by the cliffs being almost swept a bit away by the waves and the wind, and you know, this really dramatic stormy landscape. And then in the second half of the volume, he goes to Baalbek, and he finds out there's 2 Baalbeks, and the Baalbek with the church is Old Baalbek, and it turns out that by the time that he's there, you know, years and years and years after this book he'd read had been written, the sea has retreated, it's miles away from the sea, and a bustling town has been built up around this old church, and so it's nothing at all like what he'd imagined. And then the Baalbek he's actually staying in is then where the coast now is, and it's a very pretty modern seaside resort, and so it's again nothing at all like he imagined. And so there's this idealized version of the past that's very quickly demolished by the present. And I think the narrator seems to realize that yeah, maybe this thing that he's doing might be unhealthy. Maybe he's not really living in the real world. Maybe his daydreams are taking up a little too much space in his head. And he makes a friendship with a painter called Elistair. I hope I'm saying his name right. And they bring up the subject of daydreams, and so I thought I would just read out their conversation before I go. Someone advised me once, I said, thinking of the conversation that we'd had with Legrandin at Combray, as to which I was glad of an opportunity of learning Elistair's views, not to visit Brittany, because it would not be wholesome for a mind with a natural inclination towards daydreams. Not at all, he replied. When a mind has a tendency towards daydreams, it's a mistake to shield it from them, to ration them. So long as you divert your mind from its daydreams, it will not know them for what they are. You will be the victim of all sorts of appearances because you will not have grasped their true nature. If a little daydreaming is dangerous, the cure of it is not to dream less, but to dream more, to dream all the time. One must have a thorough understanding of one's daydreams if one is not to be troubled by them. There is a way of separating one's dreams from one's life, which so often produces good results, that I wonder whether one oughtn't to try it just in case, simply as a preventative. As certain surgeons suggest that, to avoid the risk of appendicitis later on, we ought to all have our appendixes taken out when we're children. And so, in a way, if you're not to dream at all, if you're just to force yourself away from your daydreams, from your imagination, you're in a way kind of missing out, and you need to, I suppose, really do what our narrator is doing in some points, and just immerse yourself in certain points in your imagination, in your memory, in your daydreams, just to recognise it for what it is, and to kind of recognise, I suppose, that that's a part of you. It's part of your human experience, and then you can slowly, I suppose, as you develop, then maybe work out a way for it to kind of connect with your with the other elements of your human experience. At least that's how I took away that conversation, and that seems to be where the narrator seemed to be leading. That it seemed like he was wondering if he was not really living life, maybe physically enough. He wasn't in the here and now, but maybe it's okay at certain points to be swept off a little bit. So at least that's how I took it. So I won't ramble on for too much longer. I think I'll leave it there. So there are some of my thoughts on the second volume of Remembrance of Things Past. That was Within a Budding Grove, and I'll be back at some point with the Guermantes Way. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.